I'd love to hear about like the post-COVID kind of ambition. You know, when you're mentioning that when you started here, you were looking for partnerships in the private sector, and that hadn't really been explored before because a lot of the funding came from governments. And so I was wondering if you could take us through a little bit about, you know, what are the budget requirements? How much is being fulfilled by governments? How much of it is being provided by private sector, and how much more is going to be needed by private sector in the future? Because I think, you know, there's always a sense of, okay, well, what does the other partner get out of it? And I think, you know, over time, I've seen a lot more innovation in the types of partnerships that can exist that perhaps, like you said, fit the business needs of what they're looking to do and kind of achieve mutual objectives. So I was wondering if you could take us through a little bit of the journey about what you've seen at the beginning of those private sector partnerships and what you've seen now.
No, perfect. Excellent question. So actually, what we saw is when we started our globally, not here in the region, but globally, when we started our partnerships with the private sector, it was around $50,000 15 years ago, and now we're talking around half a billion dollar,
Wow.
like almost $500 million, and that's mainly, and guess from where this money is coming mostly from, individuals. So it's not from companies, it's not from foundations, it's from people, mainly in Spain, Italy, Sweden, a lot of places, Japan, who are, so they stop on the street, they give you their credit card, and they commit, and they give you every month. And
Wow.
that's why it's growing organically, because they commit, we take care of them, we make sure they stay with us. But of course, part of it is big amount of money that is coming from big companies like IKEA, for example, local companies, small amounts, foundations, big amounts. And one program I have to say that we're very proud of, Nadia, that we started a few years ago is faith-based fundraising. And
Yeah.
and you know, we live in this part of the world. A lot of refugees, actually 60% of them are in the Islamic um, uh, organization countries, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of refugees there. And what we try to do is to open the door for those who would like to give their even faith-based donation through UNHCR, right? And we did the whole program for this. And now we launched our Islamic philanthropy second report, and a lot of individuals are giving online. Even, you know, you have big foundations are contributing. So we're trying to diversify as much as possible. And you can imagine for an organizations like UNHCR, it can be very challenging to change mentality and change shift, to go more cultural, to go more, you know, talk to religions, etc. But we're the UN. I mean, we're part of the whole world at the end of the day. So again, I'm optimistic because we see a lot of good signs coming. I just tell you a secret now, because I just was on the phone with my colleague in Egypt, and she told me there's this guy who committed a million guinea. And even from countries where you think, you know, I love Egypt, but the economic situation is tough, but people who can give, they would give, especially now in the COVID-19. And he gave for the COVID-19 situation to support refugees. So after COVID, definitely the word, we all say that. It's a cliche now, but it's not going to be the same.
Yeah.
But I think what's going to change, uh, I really don't know now, but I think we're just going to open our minds more and try to be more humble and celebrate the small things that people like you and me give, the same as we celebrate $1 billion. So governments give around $7 billion. This is what I want to say. So 70 million refugees, you have a budget of $7 billion. It went up from $4 billion after the Syria situation to 7, because the Syria situation itself, you know, boom, made a
Yeah.
big explosion in the needs. I mentioned the number from the private sector. It's still small proportionally, but it's growing, and we have a strategy to get it up to $1 billion. So we have $1 billion strategy to support refugees, of course, and we count on this more and more on individuals and the democracy of giving, if I may say that.
Houssam, I have a question that I'm not sure you have the answer to, but it's more of an assumption. So at DuckLife, obviously, we're an advisory at the end of the day, and we help organizations build brands, and we believe in the power of brands. Right? We believe that brands have the responsibility nowadays because they have a share of voice and access to audiences that sometimes even government institutions or nonprofits don't have access to. Right? So some of the biggest brands in the world today have huge fan bases and a huge reach and huge audiences, and they have a responsibility to be socially aware and to have some sort of a participant kind of attitude to the communities that they serve, right? So would you agree or do you believe that the more the private sector kind of becomes socially aware and kind of committed to social impact programs such as the refugee crisis that we have in the Middle East, that we will start to see not just more generosity from individuals like you and I, but also the desensitization of taboo topics historically in the region, and then governments and regulation and everything kind of improving. Would you agree that the more you get private sector brands and larger brands to participate in these programs, the more generally everything kind of progresses forward and the more it becomes kind of easier to navigate these challenges? Is that something that you're seeing?
Definitely. And at the end of the day, the brands, it's not about, the grant or the donation they give by the company, but it's really about the customers, the employees, the CSR program they do, the communication they build on. So definitely, and as we saw, in the last few years, we see a lot of sports brands and fashion brands. They they, because they see the value as well in the market. That's another subject, but I just want to make a comparison. They try to brand as well their clothes, etc., with women with hijab, because they know they exist, and they want to consume, right? So for me, this is of course, I don't know what the motivation at the end of the day, cannot judge that, but what I would love to see, that even those brands consider a market of 70 million, because the market of 70 million, it's a whole ecosystem, even economically. So, and once you start sending this, um, uh, you take this in, the refugee issue, and you don't deal with it as only as a good cause, but as well as something that exists and something that we need to solve as much as possible from where we stand. That will change the mentality. That will change, the judgment on refugees. That in some cases, racism, in some cases, some attacks, etc. And the acceptance of refugees, that they are as well economical power to our economy, to our culture, an added value. You learn a lot. So this whole change. So definitely, it makes a very positive impact, and I hope to see this more and more commercially. To be honest, outside UNHCR, of course, but that will change the mindset, because when these big brands step in, I think definitely.
I completely agree, and I think one way we refer to refugees internally, at least, is we consider them to be wasted talent. Kind of, a huge proportion of the Middle Eastern population that isn't given, the rights to participate in society, right? So, the right to work, the right to identities, the right to, the same privileges that a lot of us have. So the rights to education, the rights to access to capital, et cetera, So, we are, I've spoken about this, I think, at length also over the last few months in a topic that I call real value creation. But generally, we believe that we all have a privilege, right? We all had access to, to a safe home, shelter, to food, to education, to loving families, to opportunities, to access to capital. The fact that we can start organizations and live in places that are not, war-stricken, et cetera. Those are all privileges. And to go back and not to speak about DUCKLIFE, but the whole premise behind DUCKLIFE is, given all those privileges, let's build a business model that can sustainably kind of, fund positive impact projects, right? And that's kind of where we believe the solution at the end of the day, will land. And we're trying to prove that business model. We haven't proven it yet. We're only 1 year into the business, but we actually believe that in order to sustainably solve any problem, you need a sustainable way to make money that also incorporates positive impact. So do you think are you seeing more and more organizations have formal commitments over time, or are they one-off campaigns? Are you starting to see a change in the commercial relationship between UNHCR and brands, or not really?
Yes, and that's because, again, a friendship like this, because what happens is that when they see that Chris trust X NGO or X UN agency or X goes for some times, they will say, oh, okay, so we don't have to do our due diligence very toughly because it seems there's something good there. When they see that, MBC, we have a long relationship with them, for example. So it's really this, your due diligence as an organization is through these relationships, and we see more and more, the more we keep it, the more it's attracting other friends to come in and say, listen, it seems that you guys are doing a good job, how can we help you, right? And definitely that's the model we want to take. If I was telling Nadia, we're going hopefully for $1 billion strategy in the coming few years, and without sustainable partnerships, we cannot do that. But can I add something on what you said, Chris? Because the opportunities that refugees have. Just one thing I'm lately passionate about it, to be honest, is e-learning, because I see how much my kids here at home are they are so privileged, alhamdulillah, we're lucky. So they have their school, it's obviously systematically they moved from class to e-class, and then you have the refugee situation who are whether in Zatari and in Lebanon and in the displaced in Afghanistan, in Yemen, and I'm so worried on how they're going to shift from are they going to lose the year educationally? Forget about the degree. It's just knowledge-wise, how we can help them to provide that. And this can only come from innovative partnership that, thinking out of the box, try to be there on the ground, try to put a system in place from internet to, we've done that, but not on the scale that somebody thought that everybody need to stay home. I just wanted to add this point because I think it's totally important. And after COVID, we need to be ready for such partnerships and situations.
And I think just building on the point that you made before, I mean, the idea about solving issues in a commercial way. I mean, I think what I've been really excited about in the last couple of months is looking at social enterprises that are looking to solve, really critical issues for refugee lives, but in a commercial way. So you have certain apps that are now offering, Arabic courses to people all over the world online. So instead of having to go in the informal market, they can go and directly, if they have access to the internet, go and teach Arabic. And I guess my question is, are you seeing a growth of these kinds of initiatives? Or they're not initiatives, they're businesses, they're social enterprises that are just trying to take a problem and find a way to benefit themselves and to benefit the end person, which could be the refugee. Are you seeing a growth in those types of initiatives, even if they're outside of UNHCR?
Totally. And I think now it's going to be, a boom of a lot of companies going out, and then obviously it's going to be the good ones will continue. But you know better about this. But can I mention one name?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, of course.
Lamsa, right?
Yes.
I subscribed for my kids some time ago, and now when I don't want them to play, I tell them, yeah, you can take the tablet, but you go to Lamsa, because I know they're going to learn Arabic, right? And I asked my colleague to reach out to Lamsa to make a partnership with them, because I appreciate them personally. And I think they're adding value. So they didn't come to us, and that I went to them and they were, oh yes, of course, let's do something together. So I'm not announcing a partnership here, but I think this kind of, but seriously, nothing that we're discussing. But you see that exactly, Nadia, what you said. I mean, if there is a business solution and somebody can add value, or both sides can add value, you want to make it happen. you know, I would like to see a story on such app about refugees, positive one. So our kids from now know, oh, there are kids who are not fortunate, and they'll grow and they don't know where they're going to be at the end of the day. And they might be our best friends. And it's okay, you know?
Yeah.
So this kind of mentality.
Reducing the stigma. Yeah.
Yes.